I'm Lori. I'm from Milton's daughter in Brooklyn, New York, and I have figured out the greatest no-bake cookie hack ever. So I am going to show you how I made Royal Icing Cookies using my knob topper stamps this time. Pecan Sandies. Don't be frightened. It's really easy, and you get better as you go. We're going to be using the knob topper stamp. If you've not done any stamping before with IOD, if you don't own any IOD stamps, if you want to try this is a great bargain because you're getting 62 on one sheet. And just so you know, for anybody who buys any stamp from me in the next couple of weeks to make cookies with, I am going to throw in this little tool, which unless you are a professional cookier, you wouldn't know what this is. It's called a cookie scribe, and it comes in handy when you're making Royal Icing cookies. I'm going to explain what is Royal Icing. Royal Icing, you can purchase it ready-made. Wilton's makes a beautiful Royal Icing. It's about $10 for a bucket. If you want, you can get it online. You can get it. I've seen it in Michael's. I've seen it all over the place. I made my own. I used 4 cups of confectioner's sugar, 5 tablespoons of warm water, and 3 tablespoons of meringue powder. This is meringue powder from Wilton's. I got this in my local Stop and Shop. You can get it online, very easy to find. You mix that up in a standing mixer for 7 to 12 minutes, or you can do the same thing with a handheld mixer. You can store it at room temperature. I like to put mine in the fridge because, I don't know, I just like to put everything in the fridge. Your Royal Icing is going to start out in a stiff consistency. You're going to add water to this to make it of a consistency that will move over your cookie and spread nicely and evenly to give you that nice, here, I'll show you. See that? The trick with Royal Icing is making it not too much water that it comes off the edge of your cookie, and not too little water that it doesn't move. You have to experiment and try it on your own. The reason there's no exact amount of water to put in your flood icing is because it changes with the humidity. You just have to eyeball it. But once you do it a couple of times, you get the hang of it. It really is so simple. I've put some icing in a bag here. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do it. This is a tipless bag. I'm going to snip off the end. You can also use a tip if you have a pastry tip. I mean, you don't have to go out and buy special stuff. A Ziploc bag and just a rubber band at the top will work great. In this case, I'm going to make a thicker flood icing, and it's going to be the only icing to flood the cookie. So I'm going to take a little bit of my icing. I'm really not going to use that much because it's really just for demo. We're going to be using food coloring today. I'm using AmeriColor food coloring. This is soft gel paste. I'm putting just a couple of drops of the white food coloring here. And I'm doing that for 2 reasons. One is it will make your icing even brighter white, which is nice. It will look really pretty. And the other reason is because putting the white in, it helps with bleeding from your colors. So when we stamp onto the cookie, you'll get, I think, a clearer image. This is perfect for adding the water to the Royal Icing to get it to flood consistency. So I'm just going to spray this. It's going to be sort of like a shampoo consistency. I'm going for someplace between, I want it to be more than what's called a 10-second flood or a 15-second flood, which is simply the viscosity of your icing. If you count to say 10 seconds or 15 seconds, whichever consistency you're looking for, that's the time that it'll take for the icing to go back together. So this, I mean, we've got a little bit to go here, but you'll see it's not going to take much for me to get this to flood consistency. So I think I'm happy with that. I'm going with this where I'm at. You may see that there's some bubbles in there, and the bubbles can be problematic, but that's where your scribe will come in handy because you use it to pop the bubbles. You give it a couple of minutes and you see, I don't know if you can see that, but the bubbles are coming to the surface. So if you can, today we don't really have the time to let this sit, but the bubbles are coming to the surface. I'm going to give it a shake. And what I'm using is just a disposable pastry bag. This is like a jam jar that I've saved. So A coupler. What is a coupler? A coupler is simply two pieces of plastic. Usually you could buy this in Michael's for $1. It holds your tip in place. I'm going to put this end, I'm going to drop it down into the pastry bag. And if you can see, I've just dropped it inside the pastry bag. Right, there's a lip there. I'm just going to take my fingernail so that I can see where the lip is, make a line. I'm going to now cut that off. Right there. Okay. Now I can drop that tip in. The coupler is in. I'm going to put my tip over it. I believe, like I said, this is a number 5. If I was doing regular piping, I'd use a much smaller opening, but this is a number 5. And now I'm just going to twist that on. And now my tip is in there. That's it. Now, going inside out, dropping it into my jam jar. It's a great, easy way to get this to, it just holds your bag in place while you're trying to get your icing in. And that's it. Now I've got myself a filled bag. Gonna give it a little twist. There we go. Okay, I have a little rubber band here. And don't worry, I will put the royal icing recipe in the notes if you're watching this eventually on YouTube. The recipe I got I got it off the Milton website. Okay, so now let's do some cookie flooding. Now these I opened yesterday. I got these by accident. These are the cashew. I like normally using the classic pecan sandy because the surface is really nice and flat. This is a little bit more nubbly because there's some pieces of nuts in there, but it's okay. It will work. All right, so now I've got my cookie. The idea is that I'm going to take my icing bag and I'm just going to go around the edge. Just take it around, and if you just sort of hover slowly in your circle around the edge, and you know what? I know right away this is too loose. This is going to be too loose, but we're going to do one. Let's do one and see how it comes out. So now I've simply filled it in. I'm going to take my scribe, and I'm going to use my scribe to get all of that icing to meet and to help push it along. And I can also use the scribe to move my cookie so I don't have to touch it. So, and then the other thing you want to use your scribe for is you can use it to get rid of any air bubbles that form as you're working. If you go too far to the edge, it's possible that some of the icing might run off if it's loose like this, and that's okay. All you need to do is use your finger to wipe the runoff. Let's go on to another one. This time I'm going to use the flood icing that I have in the piping bag without a tip. I'm going to cut off the smallest tip off that edge because I don't want it to be too big of a opening. Okay, this is definitely a little bit thicker than the other icing that I made. I'm just flooding the cookie. I'm taking my scribe and I'm just going to tease the icing over to the edge so that there's no opening. It's all smooth. And you can sort of redirect some of your icing. If the icing has moved like that, was sort of going a little bit off to the side, I can kind of tease it over to the side. You have a little bit of control. I don't have a turntable, but what I do have is the lid of a cottage cheese container. And you know what? It's the perfect way to, because you just use the edge of the container, right, the lip, and use that. I need a little bit more icing on here. So I'm going to move on now to decorating, and we're going to be using the knob topper stamp. And like I said earlier, there's 62 designs on here. The one thing that you need to know, if you've never worked with these before, when you're taking them out of the package, you must, and it's only one time, you must condition your stamp. The idea of conditioning is basically you're just, here I'm going to show you very quickly. This is the idea. You take a piece of sandpaper, 220 is fine. A fine grit is just fine. You're gonna go one direction, just scratching in one direction across your stamp, and then you're gonna give it a turn and you're gonna scratch this way. So basically we went cross, we did crosshatch. And what that does is it opens up the surface. It gives it something for the medium, whatever medium you're using to grab onto. I've got a cookie here. I purchased these. I've got the AmeriColor, it's called the student kit, and you get, I don't know, I think there's, what is it, 3, 6, 9, there's 12. Yeah, there's 12 different colors in here. So this is just nice if you want to have, you know, an assortment of colors. It's a good basic selection. I've also purchased, because I like blue, I have a Wedgwood blue that I purchased separately. I have the bright white that I purchased separately. For reasons I do not know, the white doesn't seem to grab onto the stamp the way the other colors do, because I was trying to put a white imprint on, say, the blue cookie. I don't know why, and I'm gonna find that out, but so we're not gonna work with the white right now. Let's pick sky blue. I've got sky blue here. Okay, so how are we gonna put this on? Now, the last time you saw me do this, you saw me use a brayer. We're not using a brayer today. We're using these. You all have them in your house, cosmetic wedges. They're just little sponge wedges. And all you need is a small piece. So what I do is I just cut it into a couple of small pieces. It's the perfect way to get your food coloring onto your stamp. So let's use, this is pretty. This is sort of like a, what do you call this? Like a mandala? Mandala? I'm just obsessed with using lids. It's just easy. Just putting a little bit on my lid. And I'm going to use a little piece of sponge, and I'm just going to pat and offload, just like you are with your paint. It's the same idea. Pat, offload, and now I'm just going to pat this. I'm just trying to get it around on the surface. I don't want it to, you know, it's no different than when you're working with paints. If you've worked with these stamps before, you don't want to overload it. You don't want it to go into the low points. You're just trying to get a nice coating of your coloring on the surface of the stamp. So I'm going to take my cookie. I'm just going to place it down. Commit. Don't jiggle it. It's pretty easy because once you put your finger down in the center, it stays. Just make sure you're making contact. You don't want to push too hard. Let's see how that came. Let's check it out. Let's put that off to the side. So let's take another one, and then we'll change color, but let's use what I've already brought out. Let's try this one. This, I think, is a little chicken with some French wording. Oh, lovely. That's my chicken. A rooster. Is it a chicken or a rooster? I don't know. But it's pretty. Let's try another color. Let's try, how about red? I have red here. Put a little bit of red out. Whoops. How about a clock? I have a clock face here. Let's try the clock. I mean, there's just like no end. There's the, I love this. There's like a grain sack stripe. There's a sun. There's a fleur-de-lis. There's birds. There's butterflies and bees with crowns. And there's a rabbit. Oh my goodness. There's so many patterns on this. And they're all so pretty. Yay. There you go. There's my clock. There's my clock. So if you had people over, or for the holidays with your family, I mean, I know we're not all having like a bunch of people over these days, but you know, you're gonna stay home with your family, you could still make it special. They're almost too pretty to eat. That's what people have said to me. They're too pretty to eat. Okay, so the last thing you want to do to your cookies, just to give it a nice seal so that that food coloring doesn't come off on your fingers when you're eating it, I'm going to dip into my cornstarch with my dry brush, tap it off, and I'm just going to lightly dust the top of the cookie. That's it. So again, I'm Lori, I'm Milton's daughter. If you haven't liked my page already, please give me a like and a thumbs up. So that's the story. Thank you so much for watching. Be inspired to try it. Don't be afraid. Anybody can do it. You can do it. I swear to you, you